Buddhāvataṃsaka Sutra. Book 26. The 10 Stages. Video 10. When this stage had been explained, the Buddha's power shook millions of lands, incalculable, unthinkable. Shining light emanated from the body of the All-Seer. The lands illumined by the light, the beings therein were enraptured. 1,000 enlightening beings hovering in the sky presented the Buddha with gifts surpassing those of the gods. The gods of the higher heavens, ecstatic, honored the ocean of virtue with a variety of offerings. Then 1,000 goddesses, thrilled, their senses all delighted, honored the teacher with celestial song. These enlightening beings are all free from defects and defilement, impeccably practicing whatever stage they are in. Considering the wheel of the world, they go to all regions, showing the way of the victor, their minds equal to space. In the realms of humans, celestials, and dragon kings, the adornments in the 10 directions are stamped with higher blessings. Greater still, incomparable, is what the enlightening beings show. They produce the jewels of the path of knowledge. In one land unmoving, detached in all lands, reaching all worlds like the cool light of the moon, their minds have ceased all thought of sound. Their utterances are like echoes from the mountains. To those who are weak-minded and prone to dejection they teach the practice of listeners. Those of keen mind inclined to analyze conditions they show the knowledge of the way of individual illuminates. Those who incline to benevolence, for the good of all, they show the practice of enlightening beings. To those of foremost wisdom they show the peerless body of Buddha. Like magicians performing magic, they show millions of different bodies for the benefit of sentient beings, all of them without real existence. Thus do enlightening beings, involved in the magic of knowledge, show all practices, all without real existence. Having uttered these sweet words of what they'd heard, the goddesses, seeing the Buddha, became silent. "This assembly is calm and clear," said Moon of Liberation. "Speak of the practice beyond the 8th stage, of the kings of the true teaching." Diamond Matrix said, "Enlightening beings who, by means of the mind which has thus reflected on the infinite possibilities of knowledge, are intent upon yet higher tranquilities and liberations, thinking of consummate attainment of yet higher enlightened knowledge, entering into the secret of the Buddhas, ascertaining the greatness of inconceivable knowledge, purifying the ascertainment of spell concentration, extending mystic knowledge, acting in accord with the differences in worlds, cultivating the insuperability of the powers, expertise, and unique qualities of Buddhas, following the might of the turning of the wheel of teaching of Buddhas, not abandoning the attainment of empowerment of great compassion, thus come to the 9th stage of enlightening beings. Enlightening beings in this stage of the good mind accurately know the performance of good, bad, and neutral things, the performance of mundane and transmundane things, the performance of conceivable and inconceivable things, the performance of tainted and untainted things, the performance of regular and irregular things, the performance of things listeners and individual illuminates do, the performance of things enlightening beings do, the performance of things pertaining to Buddhahood, and the performance of fabricated and unfabricated things, all these they know as they really are. By means of this knowing awareness, they know accurately how all beings get into entanglement of mind, how they get into entanglement in afflictions, entanglement in acts, entanglement in senses, entanglement in resolutions, entanglement in dispositions, entanglement in inclinations and propensities, entanglement in birth, entanglement in the continuation of habit energies, and how they get into entanglement in the definition of what is beneficial, what is not beneficial, and what is neither beneficial nor unbeneficial. All this they know as it really is. They also know the compartmentalization of mind of sentient beings. They accurately know their complexity of mind, the dissolution and non-dissolution in instantaneous action of mind, the incorporeality of mind, the endless, ubiquitous all-pervasiveness of mind, the luminosity of mind, the defilement or non-defilement of mind, the bondage or liberation of mind, the creation by illusion of mind, the manifestation of mind according to the state of being. They accurately know hundreds of thousands of differences of mind. They also know accurately how far-reaching afflictions are, the endlessness of their applications, their inseparable simultaneity, their being the sole cause of the appearance of propensities, their interconnection and disconnection with the mind, their appearance according to the state of being in the continuity of births, their distinction of being in the realm of desire, form, or formlessness, the great blameworthiness of pride stuck with craving ignorance and views, the continuity of the causality of physical, verbal, and mental actions. In sum, they accurately know the pervasiveness of activities of up to 84,000 afflictions. They also accurately know the goodness, badness, or neutrality of actions, whether they are evident or not, their inextricable coexistence with mind, their continuity of fruition through accumulation in spite of their own essence instantly disintegrating, whether or not they have developments, the variety of differences in rewards of pure, impure, and mixed actions, the infinity of the field of action, the difference in holiness and mundanity, how what is produced in the present state is experienced another time around, whether or not actions are a means of release, and whether or not they are sure. In sum, they accurately know as many as 84,000 different aspects of action, as well as how to skillfully ascertain their differences. They also know accurately the weakness, mediocrity, and strength of faculties, their disjunction or continuity past to future, their superiority, mediocrity, and inferiority, their inextricable coexistence with afflictions, whether or not they are vehicles of liberation, sure or unsure, their suitability for guidance, according to maturity or immaturity, their nature as grasping of appearances in the rapid disintegration repeated in the net of faculties, the invincibility of the overlordship of faculties, the difference in regressing and non-regressing faculties, their various differences of extent and concurrence. In sum, they accurately know as many as 84,000 different aspects of faculties. They also know the weakness, mediocrity, and strength of intentions, their disjunction or continuity past to future, their superiority, mediocrity, and inferiority, their coexistence with afflictions, whether they are vehicles of liberation, sure or not, their nature as grasping of appearances in the rapid disintegration repeated in the net of intentions, the invincibility of the overlordship of intent, the difference in regressing and non-regressing intent, differences in extent and concurrence. In sum, they know as many as 84,000 various aspects of intent. They also accurately know the weakness, mediocrity, or strength of dispositions, their disjunction or continuity past and future, their superiority, mediocrity, or inferiority, their concurrence with afflictions, their qualities of being vehicles of liberation or not, sure or not, the certainty or uncertainty of their maturation, their nature of being grasping of appearances in the swift dissolution repeated in the net of dispositions, the invincibility of overlordship of disposition, their persistence and differentiation, differences in extent and concurrence. In sum, they know accurately as many as 84,000 different aspects of inclinations and thousands of various aspects of dispositions. They also accurately know the weakness, mediocrity, or strength of wills, their disjunction or continuity past to future, their superiority, mediocrity, or inferiority, their concurrence with afflictions, their quality of being vehicles of liberation or not, sure or not, their certainty or uncertainty of maturity, their being grasping of appearances in the swift dissolution repeated in the net of wills, the invincibility of the overlordship of will, their persistence and variety, their extent and concurrence. They accurately know as many as 84,000 different aspects of will as well as thousands of ways of thinking. They know accurately how propensities are born together with intent and mind, their connection with mind, their disconnection, division, and extent, their never having been uprooted and cast out since beginningless time, their being incompatible with all meditations, liberations, concentrations, trances, and mystic knowledges, their binding of the continuity of existence in the world, their activity of binding the mind since beginningless time, their nature of manifestation of accretions in the realms of sense, their being something to be quelled, their presence or absence in the states of the stages of enlightening, their being extracted only by the path of sages. All this enlightening beings know accurately. They also accurately know the variety of births, birth according to actions, the differentiation of hells, animal, ghost, and Titan realms, humans and celestials, birth in the realms of form and formlessness, birth in realms with thought and without thought, the sprouting of future becoming from the field of action, the moisture of craving, the darkness of ignorance, and the seeds of consciousness, the concurrence of name and form, continuity due to ignorant craving for becoming, the beginninglessness and endlessness of desire for enjoyment, desire for existence, and the likes of sentient beings, and how birth is brought forth by grasping for things of the world. All this they know as it really is. They also know whether or not habit energies are active. Infusion by impressions according to involvements. Habituation according to activities of beings. Habituation according to acts, afflictions, and customs. Habituation to good, bad, and neutral customs. Habituation dominating future courses of existence. Habituation gradually becoming dominant. Habituation in which there persist aberrations producing long-lasting affliction. Substantial and insubstantial habituation. And permeation by impressions of seeing and hearing Buddhist practitioners, individual illuminates, enlightening beings, and Buddhas. All these they know as they are. They also know accurately the correct stabilization, incorrect stabilization, and correct and incorrect stabilization of groups of people. Their correct stabilization by correct views, their incorrect stabilization by incorrect views, their non-stabilization without either, their incorrect stabilization by one of the 5 hellish deeds that bring immediate consequence. Their correct stabilization by the 5 religious faculties, their lack of stability without either, their incorrect stabilization in the 8 deviations, their correct stabilization in the Eightfold Right Path, their lack of further involvement with either, their indeterminacy without either, their incorrect stabilization on unrelenting envy, jealousy, and lack of sympathy. Their stabilization and correctness of practice of the supreme path of sages, and the indeterminacy of groups apart from both of these. They know all these as they really are. Enlightening beings who have attained such knowledge are said to be established in the 9th stage, good mind. Enlightening beings in this stage of good mind, knowing the differences in sentient beings' conduct, undertake to effect their liberation accordingly. They truly know the maturity of sentient beings as well as their discipline. They truly know the teachings of the vehicle of listeners, the teachings of the vehicle of individual illuminates, the teachings of the vehicle of enlightening beings, and the teachings of the stage of Buddhahood. Knowing all this, they expound teachings to beings so they may realize thusness. They expound teachings according to differences in mental dispositions, according to differences in propensities, according to differences in faculties, according to differences in inclinations, through approaching knowledge according to differences in spheres of action, through proceeding according to knowledge of all spheres of action, through proceeding according to tendencies toward entanglement according to disposition, through adaptation to the afflictions, actions, and habits of the various states of being, through going along with the structures of groups, according to the application of whatever means by which liberation may be attained, by appearing in endless forms, by appearing in all worlds in ways congenial to the beings there, by knowing how to say everything, and by skill in ascertainment of all specific knowledge necessary for elucidation of the teachings. Enlightening beings established in the stage of good mind act as preachers of the teaching and preserve the treasury of teaching of the enlightened. In these enlightening beings the unadulterated four special knowledges of enlightening beings are always operative. What are the four? They are the special knowledge of principles, of meanings, of expression, and of elocution. By the knowledge of principles they know the specific characteristics of principles. By knowledge of meanings they know the differentiations of principles. By knowledge of expression they know the unconfused teaching of principles. By knowledge of elocution they know the interrelated continuity of principles. Also, by specific knowledge of principles they know the non-existent body of things. By specific knowledge of meanings, they know the beginning and end of things. By specific knowledge of expression they expound the teaching by means of interconnected representations of all things. By specific knowledge of elocution they can expound the teaching boundlessly without destroying representations as they are. Also, by specific knowledge of principles they know the present differentiation of things. By specific knowledge of meanings they know the past and future differentiation of things. By specific knowledge of expression they expound the teaching without mix-up of past, future, and present. By specific knowledge of elocution they expound the teaching in each of the past, future, and present by the beginningless and endless light of truth. Also, by specific knowledge of principles they know the variety of phenomena and principles. By specific knowledge of meanings they know the variety of meanings. By specific knowledge of expression they expound the teaching according to the local language. By specific knowledge of elocution they expound the teaching according to mental dispositions and knowledge. Also, by specific knowledge of principles they know the skill of differentiation of direct knowledge of things without mix-up. By specific knowledge of meanings they know the arrangement of suchness by inductive knowledge. By specific knowledge of expression they teach by demonstration of conventional knowledge without mix-up. By knowledge of elocution they expound the teaching by familiarity with knowledge of ultimate truth. Also, by specific knowledge of principles, they know one indestructible principle in all things. By specific knowledge of meanings, they enter into realization of familiarity with the interdependent origination of matter and mind, senses, sense data, and sense consciousnesses, and the truths. By specific knowledge of expression they teach in words pleasing and easy to understand for all beings. By specific knowledge of elocution they teach by more and more endless illumination of the teaching. Also, by specific knowledge of principles they know the variety of entries into the one vehicle. By specific knowledge of meanings they know the distinctions of different vehicles. By the specific knowledge of expression they teach without confusing all vehicles. By specific knowledge of elocution they teach each vehicle with endless illumination of principles. Also, by the specific knowledge of principles they enter into action in accord with all practices of enlightening beings, practice of knowledge and practice of principles. By the specific knowledge of meanings they comprehend the differentiations of the teaching of the arrangement of the 10 stages. By the specific knowledge of expressions they teach by presenting the path without confusion according to the stage. By specific knowledge of elocution they teach each stage in terms of its endless aspects. Also, by the specific knowledge of principles they comprehend all Buddhas attaining enlightenment in an instant. By specific knowledge of meaning they know accord with various differences in times, phenomena, and characteristics. By knowledge of expression they teach by different utterances according to attainment of correct enlightenment. By knowledge of elocution they expound each phrase of the teaching continuously for endless eons. Also, by knowledge of principle they know action in accord with all Buddha's speech, powers, expertises, qualities of Buddhahood, great compassion, analytic knowledge, application, teaching, and omniscient knowledge. By knowledge of meaning they know the 84,000 utterances of Buddhas according to sentient beings' mental dispositions, faculties, and different inclinations. By knowledge of expression they teach the Buddha's sayings according to the differences in actions of all beings. By knowledge of elocution they expound the teaching by focus on the sphere of practice reflecting the knowledge of the enlightened. The enlightening beings who are thus skillful in effectuation of the science of these specific analytic knowledges, having reached the 9th stage, having attained the treasury of teachings of the enlightened, acting as great preachers of the teaching, come to attain the concentration spell containing meanings, the concentration spell containing principles, the concentration spell containing evocation of knowledge, the concentration spell containing illumination, the concentration spell of good intellect, the concentration spell containing treasures, the concentration spell containing vital energy, the concentration spell leading into non-attachment and non-obstruction, the concentration spell of infinity, and the concentration spell containing a store of various meanings. They attain countless millions of kinds of concentration spells filled by such spell formulae as these. They expound the teaching by countless millions of skillfully adapted utterances and unlimited adaptive means of eloquent analysis. By means of these countless millions of concentration spells as doors of access, they listen to the teaching directly from innumerable Buddhas of the 10 directions and, having heard the teaching, do not forget it, and also expound it, with innumerable differentiations, as they have heard it. They completely learn teachings from one Buddha through the mediums of countless millions of concentration spells, and as from one, so too from endless Buddhas by measure of their will, To a yet greater extent do they receive the light of the means of access to the teaching, such as cannot be attained by the retentive power of greatly learned disciples who take up and hold what they learn, even in 100,000 eons. Thus, having attained mental command through concentration spells, having attained eloquence, sitting on the seat of teaching, they pervade 1 billion worlds and expound the teaching to beings according to the differences in the mentalities of the beings. As they sit on the seat of teaching, their seat of teaching has immeasurably greater splendor than any except those of the Buddhas and the enlightening beings who have reached the stage of coronation. Sitting on the seat of teaching, at will they make one utterance, causing all congregations to perceive it as various different utterances. At will they convey knowledge by various different utterances and nuances. At will they draw forth ways of entry into the teaching by emanating beams of light. At will they emit voices from all their pores. At will they bring forth voices of teaching from all forms manifest in the universe. At will they convey knowledge of all phenomena by means of one utterance. At will they make all sounds into the sound of the teaching. At will they bring forth the voice of the teaching from the song and music of all worldly realms. At will they draw forth all the different expressions of the teaching from a single syllable. At will they draw forth untold ways of entry into the teaching from each and every atom in the clusters of elements of earth, water, fire, and wind in untold worlds. Even if the beings of 1 billion worlds were to come up, all at the same moment, and ask questions, each of them asking questions with countless nuances, each one asking a different question, the enlightening beings would take in every tone and nuance, and with a single utterance would satisfy all those beings' minds. Even if the beings of untold worlds all came up in the same moment and asked questions, each with innumerable nuances, each different, the enlightening beings would take them all on instantly and edify them all with a single utterance. Pervading untold worlds, they expound the teaching according to beings' dispositions, faculties, and inclinations. Sitting in discourse on the teaching, receiving the empowerment of the Buddhas, they simultaneously face all beings, doing the work of Buddhahood. All the more do they undertake the absorption of the light of knowledge in this way, even if on a single point there be Buddhas as numerous as atoms in untold worlds teaching in the same immeasurable number of assemblies, each Buddha teaching according to the differences of all those innumerable beings, presenting to each being's disposition of mind an equally immeasurable number of teachings, and as one Buddha does in one assembly, so also all Buddhas, and as in one point so in all universes, there we should produce a memory of such enormous extent and receive the revelation of the teaching at once from all the Buddhas without missing a single word. We should purify the ability to express with certainty such revelation of wisdom as will instantly satisfy all the beings in the aforementioned assemblies, with their various groups, ways, and tendencies, as well as the beings in so many worlds. Enlightening beings who have reached this stage of good mind, becoming all the more single-minded in their focus of attention, day and night, entering the sphere of Buddhas, joining the company of Buddhas, reach the profound liberation of enlightening beings. Enlightening beings acting in accord with such knowledge never stop the vision of Buddhas in concentration. In each age, seeing countless Buddhas, they honor, respect, and venerate them. With immense vision of Buddhas, they ceaselessly attend to them respectfully and ask the Buddhas questions. They attain mental command of the teaching and can expound it. those purified roots of goodness of enlightening beings become all the more beyond compare. Just as gold fashioned into ornaments, perfected by a skilled goldsmith and put on the head or neck of a universal monarch, cannot be outshone by the adornments of all minor kings and people of the 4 continents, in the same way the roots of goodness of enlightening beings in the stage of good mind, well arrayed by the light of great knowledge, are so purified that they cannot be outshone by all listeners, individual illuminates, and enlightening beings in lower stages. The light of the roots of goodness, shining on the mental tangles of afflictions of sentient beings, put an end to them. Just as great Brahmas of million world systems illumine the thickets and lowlands in all worlds of the million world system, in the same way does the light of roots of goodness of enlightening beings in this stage of good mind shine on the mental thickets of afflictions of sentient beings and put an end to them. Of the 10 transcendent ways, transcendent power is predominant in these enlightening beings, while they practice the others as best they can. This is a summary explanation of the 9th stage of enlightening beings, called good mind, the full details of which would take forever to tell. Most of the enlightening beings in this stage become great Brahmas of enormous power, lords of a million worlds, eminent, unsurpassed, seers of what is beneficial, masterful, able and strong in the exposition of the ways of transcendence of all listeners, individual illuminates, and enlightening beings, invincible in answering questions according to beings' dispositions. Whatever actions they undertake, whether by giving, kind speech, beneficial action, or cooperation, it is never apart from thoughts of Buddha, the teaching, the community, enlightening beings, the practices of enlightening beings, the ways of transcendence, the stages, the powers, expertises, and unique qualities of Buddhas, and ultimately omniscience in all its aspects. Why? Because they want to become the best of beings, unexcelled leaders and guides, and ultimately omniscient refuges. With this desire they exert their energy, by which exertion of energy they attain in one instant as many concentrations as atoms in countless millions of Buddha lands, see as many Buddhas as atoms in countless millions of Buddha lands, and become aware of their power. Shake as many worlds as atoms in countless millions of Buddha lands, go to as many Buddha lands as atoms in countless millions of Buddha lands, illumine as many lands as atoms in countless millions of Buddha lands, mature as many beings as atoms in countless millions of Buddha lands, abide for as many eons as atoms in countless millions of Buddha lands, penetrate as many eons past and future as atoms in countless millions of Buddha lands, ascertain as many ways of entry into the teaching as atoms in countless millions of Buddha lands, and manifest as many bodies as atoms in countless millions of Buddha lands, manifesting each body accompanied by as many enlightening beings as atoms in countless millions of Buddha lands. Beyond that, enlightening beings with the power of vows perform, by the excellence of their vows, countless transformations, of the body, aura, mystic powers, vision, sphere of action, voice, conduct, adornment, power, resolution, and performances. Continue to video 11.